Thank you for tuning in to The Victory is Greater Than the Struggle, an ex-lesbian podcast with myself, your host, Jessica Newsom. Today, we're going to be talking about the burden of the blessing. I don't know about you guys, but I have kind of been going through a rough season. If you're watching this on YouTube, I got a little sling on my arm. I had surgery, and it hasn't been just the surgery, but it's been just a lot of things going on that has caused me a lot of stress and frustration and things like that. And I know that you also, are going through things because life isn't perfect, right? You're struggling with things maybe in your thoughts. You're struggling with battling, those thoughts of the enemy trying to pull you this way or that way. You're struggling maybe in friendships, relationships. Should I let this person go? Should this person stay? And you're honestly resting in a lot of confusion. I want to talk to you about my journey this season, this year, with all of those things. But I want to more importantly talk about how we should just get through it. I've been talking to several different people via telephone who I mentored to one-on-one. And, just the conversations have been absolutely amazing. There's been people who are having issues at work, people who are having issues walking away from their ex-lover, right? Maybe they're about to get married and they listen to the voice of God and they're like, okay, God's telling me that, I need to walk away from homosexuality because it leads to sin and death. But it's so difficult, right? Many of you have felt like that. Many of you have felt like I felt, which is, man, it seems like the moment I start living for God, all hell breaks loose. The moment I say yes to God, it seems like everything gets so much worse. Why on earth does this, why on earth should I follow God if this is what it looks like? Is this the life that he's called us to live? Is this the victorious life that the Bible talks about? Well, I want to be totally honest and transparent with you, right? Because to be honest with you, every blessing, most blessings, right, have a burden that we have to carry. Now, I'm not saying a burden that we have to carry forever or anything like that, but the weight of a blessing that God is giving us or something that he's preparing for us, the weight of that blessing, that good thing that God is doing and trying to shape, the enemy at the same time knows that. And he is trying to do everything to thwart that. He's trying to do everything to get us to reject that blessing or to not be able to receive that blessing. And the other part of that burden of a blessing is when God gives us something, are we able to handle that blessing? When God gives us something good, think about the different things that you're asking God for. If he gave it to you, can you handle it? It's not just about receiving it, but it's the weight of having it. So let's jump into this, all right? Jumping into it by telling you all my business, but you like it because it helps you. And that's how I learn. That's how I understand, and that's what helps me. So I do the same thing with you guys. Okay, so now this season has been amazing. Let me tell you all that glitters, okay? This year, 2021, I met a guy. We started dating in May. Right? Started getting to know each other in May, and it's been amazing, right? He's absolutely amazing. He's a wonderful man. He has amazing kids. I love them to death, right? And we are now officially engaged, if you could see that. Look at all that pretty bling, right? So we got engaged 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago, something like that. And that's awesome because that is something that I've been asking God for, right? In the beginning, 10 years ago, my prayer was, God, I'm saying yes to you. I'm walking away from homosexuality because it is sin. And I realize that now. And you're telling me to walk away from it. You're telling me that you got me. You're telling me to trust you. So I'm taking a leap of faith and I'm jumping in. Okay, I'm jumping into it. Both feet jumping in. And I still want to get married and have kids, but I don't like guys at all, right? The fear, right, was just being intimate with a guy. And sometimes, like, when I would tell some people that, people that mentor me, people that I go to who are wiser, and they aren't necessarily ex-LGBTQ, right? But they always laugh. They always laugh, right? Because they know something that I don't know. Right? Because I'm stuck in this place of confusion and being scared, and God, I don't know if I could trust God, and basing my future off of my past experiences. They laugh because they're like, that's not even going to be a thing. You'll be fine. Don't even worry about that. What else is bothering you? Right? But that thing was so big, it was such a weight. And so walking out this past 10 years and getting to a place to where God's like, okay, I'm going to give you this blessing, right? And then so quickly getting engaged. Now, I would not have gotten engaged at all if I did not know that this man was for me. Like, I needed confirmation from God. I got that confirmation from God. Right? It was confirmed through confirmation from someone else, right? And that's awesome. So now I just know, okay, this is something that God has ordained. This is a blessing that I've been waiting for. But there's been so much burden, right? And so this past year, the past several months, there has been so many attacks going on left and right. And it's been so difficult. It has been heartbreaking. It has been gut-wrenching, right? And so what I have learned, taking a step back from the burden, what I have learned, and this is in the Bible, right? I have learned that I needed to be able to put on the full armor of God, Ephesians 6, read it. I needed to put on the full armor of God so I can withstand the attacks of the enemy. Every season, God tells you to always, every day, put on the full armor of God, right? Get your mind right. Get your heart right. He tells us to do this every day. We're supposed to grow in this every day, right? We may feel like the first day we put on that armor and, let me just Google this for you guys. We may feel like, okay, well, putting on that armor in the beginning is so heavy, right? We don't even know how to use it. What in the world is the full armor of God, right? And so as we are learning and growing in God, we're learning how to do this. And it's like putting on something that doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel comfortable. We aren't used to it. And learning how to fulfill those shoes properly, learning how to put that on comfortably. And over time, learning how to wield the sword and learning how to just become the warrior that God has called us to be so that we have that armor on and we're ready to deal with the onslaught of the enemy. And so when we look at that full armor, right, it says in Ephesians 6, verse 11, put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand. So that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood. It's not against people. All the stuff that we're going through, our drama, our issue isn't with them, right? It says, it's not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, not if, when the day of evil comes, you are going to face the enemy. And following God, the enemy puts his sights on you. Because before, when you were not choosing God, when you were doing life your way, you were on the enemy's side. So he lets you have your fun. You were not a threat to him. But the moment you say yes to God, he's like, wait a second, you're changing sides? Let me get some of my men on you. This says when the enemy comes. So do not think that walking with God, you are going to be without trials and tribulations. No, it's going to come, but we can be prepared. It says, so that you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, my God, after you've done everything, after you've tried, after you've cried, after you have done your best, still stand. 14, stand firm then with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. And in addition to all this, take up the shield of faith with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, and pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. So the past couple of months, I have dealt with attacks from just even at work, right? Dealing with anxiety, dealing with fear, dealing with stress that manifested into a lot of stomach issues, right? Just a lot of stress. I struggled with depression, okay? Sometimes when I'm feeling good, I may start skipping some of my my medicine for depression, right? And so when I have my blue cloud come, that's what I call when I just feel that depression coming on. I call it a blue cloud, a blue day, right? When I feel it come on, I'm like, oh my God, I should have been taking my medicine, right? But I didn't, right? I was caught off guard, thinking that everything's fine, everything's good. And a lot of time that's what we do. When we think that everything is fine, when we think that everything is good, we let go of the hand of God and we're just like, you know what, I'm kind of good. And we lay off of our prayer life. We kind of relax on reading the Bible or going to church or listening to messages, whatever we were doing in the beginning when we were on fire for God. So I started to struggle with depression. I struggled with a lot of confusion because the attacks of the enemy were strong. The enemy did not want me to get engaged to my fiance at all. I started dealing with issues with relationships, personal relationships in my life, issues within the ministry, right? And through it all, I did not do what I needed to do, which was staying close to God. I started to deal with a lot of this in my own way, which was ignoring it, right? Maybe getting on Instagram whenever my mind starts to just kind of struggle or I'm starting to go through something or when the enemy attacks, a lot of times I'll just get on Instagram or I'll get on Facebook and try to drown out what's going on with something that will give me temporary peace. How many of you guys do that? Does that fix anything? No, it does not. Does it give you clarity when you're confused? No, it does not. Are you able to tune in and listen to what the Holy Spirit wants you to do with those situations? No, you can't. And so God is not a God of confusion. He is not. He is not a God of confusion. So if you are resting in confusion, you're walking out of the LGBTQ, you're struggling with X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, God is not a God of confusion. So when we find ourselves being attacked by the enemy, right? Maybe God is trying to bless you. Maybe God is working something in your life and he's like, okay, I got this thing for you and he's preparing it, but he has to also prepare you to receive that blessing. So me receiving this blessing of getting engaged and we'll be getting married in February in 80 something days, right? There is a burden that comes along with that. The last season I was in, God's like, you need to put on the full armor of God and you need to learn how to wear it a little better every season. You need to know how to wield that sword a little bit better every season. You need to know how to put on that helmet a little better every season. You need to make sure that breastplate is perfectly fitted, and you need to know how to wear that properly every season. You need to get stronger every season, wiser every season, closer to God every season, so that when God blesses you with something, you got to know that oftentimes there comes a burden, and you have to be able to deal with that. Now, if I was to be better prepared this season in dealing with that, then I think there were definitely things I would have done differently. Most definitely. And I don't know what the chain reaction to that would have been. But if God tells you to do something, man, we got to do it. So every season, or whenever, whatever, like whenever God blesses you with something, there comes a weight to it. Most definitely. There comes a weight. There comes a weight. And we have to be able to handle that weight. So as I'm going through this season, I'm learning, I'm seeing, I'm growing, so that when I move forward into the things of God, I know that weight is going to be a little heavier, a little heavier, a little heavier, but you'll be able to deal with that weight, because in the last season, you learned how to wield the instruments that God has given you, so it doesn't phase you the way it normally would. I hope that this makes sense. I really do. I really do. But man, I think even I've heard pastors preach just on how, those pastors that are big pastors, well-known pastors, making millions of dollars, doing stuff all over the world, the blessings. One of them was talking about the blessings that God gives them, but the weight that it bears, right? The attacks aren't small like when we first came to God, right? But the attacks are bigger. They're $1 million attacks, right? These attacks are on a whole nother scale. But they have learned each season to wield the instruments that God has given us. Learn how to pray, learn how to seek God, learn how to come to Him immediately, learn how to pray in the Spirit and pray continuously, learn how to rest in that faith, rest in the assurance of knowing that they're a child of God and that they're the righteousness of God, so that they don't fall into the traps of depression or the traps of confusion, whatever the case is. You know what I'm saying? Maybe, they were like, I need to see a therapist, whatever it is that they need to do so that they can grow, so that when they move to the next level, they can deal with those new devils, because there's always going to be more. But I want to encourage you today that you can do it and that you can get through it. I am so grateful for the tools that God has given us, because at the end of the day, when I realized that I was in a place that just was not healthy, I got back to where I needed to be. Sometimes y'all may be like me, and when things get really bad, you're like, okay, all right, I'm coming, God, I'm coming. And I sat down and I said, okay, I'm going to worship God. Hadn't taken the time to do that in a while. And so I sat down and I started worshiping God, but I had to push past all of the stuff that I was wrapped up in, because I wasn't where I needed to be, right? So I was wrapped up in frustration and anger, and I did not want to praise God, man. I was so upset. I kicked my Bible clear across the room, okay? I was so upset. I wasn't feeling it, but I also knew that was the enemy. I knew it. I knew that excuse me. I knew that it was the enemy just trying to pull me back from getting to that place of just being with God and getting closer to God so that I can kick the enemy to the curb. And I knew that. And so when I pushed past that and got to that sweet spot and started worshiping God and got to that place, it's just like, okay, all right, I need to stay here. That's where we need to stay. We need to stay in the arms of God at all times, at all times. Don't ever think that you could do this on your own. Don't ever think that, because you can't. Well, you can, but it's going to suck a whole lot. It is. It is. But when we walk with God, things are so much better. So much better. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. If this ministry blesses you, please bless us. You can go to www.loveatthecross.com and you can give a donation if you want to do that. All donations go to being able to do these podcasts, putting all this stuff up on air for you guys, as well as doing my one-on-ones. I don't charge at all for the one-on-ones, okay? I speak to people all around the world. I absolutely love it. If you would like to speak with me, I would love to hear your heart. I think some of the things that people say a lot of the time is, man, Jessica, I've been listening to you for a year, 2 years, and I just never, contacted you. And finally I did, and I'm so grateful. What are you waiting for? Stop waiting. There's no need to wait, okay? I'm here for you, want to talk to you, want to love on you, want to hear your story, want to help you out if I can, all right? And you could send me an email through the website, Love at the Cross, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can, definitely within 72 hours. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Victory is Greater Than the Struggle, an ex-lesbian podcast with myself. I am your host, Jessica Newsom.